So, lots of people dream, I'm going to go into the gluten-free biscuit business. I'm so sick of investment banking. This is a whole trend that people want to be food entrepreneurs. They're throwing it all up. They're throwing it away, and they are going to bake. You know, it's so curious that you left law to be a baker, because that is so much people's usual, you know, they want to be a TV chef or they want to be a baker. Okay. So how is it that you managed to make the transition?
With a lot of help, a lot of support, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, frankly. It took a lot of time. I thought it would take 3 months to leave law and open up a business, and it took 18 to 20 months or so.
And why being a baker, which a tall, strapping, heterosexual man, I hate to stereotype, it's not usually the stereotype of bakers.
I got a lot of questions, and a lot of people said when I first started, like, oh, you look like a rock star or a rapper or something, because I had dreadlocks back then. I love food.
Had nothing to do with your not being white, a rapper.
I love food, and I love putting things together. And when I was busy developing a hobby, which this was at first, because it was a New Year's resolution in 1999, and then I just kind of found myself wanting to understand how to bake, and how to bake all kinds of different things. I realized that it reminds me a lot of models I used to make when I was a little boy. I used to make military miniatures of tanks and soldiers and whatnot, and it was lots of meticulous work, hours by yourself, and I loved that, but you can't share that in a way with people. I mean, I played with them when I was a kid, but no one really understood like how much I just got into them, you know. With a cake, you can slice it and serve it. People can understand a lot easier, and they're excited to. So I
can't resist interrupting and saying the origins of French pastry, which we all love, are with a man named Carême, who was an architect. Okay. So the first book that was really widely followed by pastry chefs was, in fact, a designer, engineer, and architect. So you're right in a tradition.
Yep. It's lots of different parts, and I get into the ingredients. That's my whole thing. I'm all about butter, sugar, eggs, flour, cocoa powder, and like how much of each thing. How much protein's in each one, how much fat's in the liquid hydrate that we're using, whether it's milk or half and half or cream, or if it's soy milk if we're going with something light. I like thinking at that level. And what I realized when I was so into baking in this hobby stage in my apartment on Belmont and 13th was that the world of cakes is decorators and it's bakers. And typically, what I see is like the baking world for cakes, it's really like mostly decorators, people who are just into like what it looks like on the outside.
But is this not what drove a lot of the cupcake frenzy that we hope will die? It never dies. It has eternal life, which is what gave you the beginning life. Yep. But is that not what it is? There are these adorable little things that you pretend have no calories.
I've always kind of felt that like I'm not in it to win the beauty contest. You know, I'm just not. When I first opened CakeLove, we were doing a hand top with a spatula, and I was like, okay, isn't that a cupcake? Won't that work? And you know, years later, people started piping out as a standard, which we do now. It's faster and does look prettier, but I never started with the intention to be like, oh, I want to have cupcakes that just look like number 10. You know, I mean, I want it to be topped with toffee, topped with coconut, topped with something that, I don't know, just resonates, what it looks like, it tastes like that, and that taste is a nice, clean finish.
It sounds like you're more interested in flavor and actual quality of cake. I wrote a piece in The Atlantic about the cupcake craze that I was sure was going to die, and it's like 5 years ago by now. And I went and tasted a lot of cupcakes, and generally people didn't give a darn about flavor. It just didn't matter.
Right.
They were icing delivery vehicles. Mm-hmm. That did matter a lot. Mm-hmm. But the cake, indifferent to it. It sounds like you actually cared.
I care a lot about the cake, but what I've learned in the last 12 to 13 years is that, you know, I can like something as much as possible, but it doesn't really matter if it doesn't resonate with the customers, you know? And that's fine, because I'm a cake merchant, if you will, and I got to sell what people like. And one of the things we've done in the last couple of years is listen closely to what they want. And it's cream cheese icing. That seems to be the thing that people are really, you know, all about. Cupcake being a delivery mechanism or whatever it's going to be. So I don't know. I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot, changed a lot, and it's not just about me and my, kitchen in my apartment tinkering with the recipes. I think it's all very important. I don't want to. I never leave behind like what the ingredients are, but I also have to keep in mind that it's just not all about what I want. I have to blend in a lot of what people are
In
looking
fact, you
for.
were telling me beforehand that you went from very successfully having 7 retail stores to having 2 and deciding you were going to concentrate on wholesale, and then this vast innovation and change to the jar concept.
Yep.
So can you tell us something a little about what precipitated this change? And I think it had a lot to do with customer comments.
It did. A lot of people over time, gave feedback and commentary, and for a while I was looking at it and paying attention to it, and then I said oh, well, we do what we do, we want to stick with what we know. Some people really like our product, and let's just stick with that. But, the rise of the feedback got to the point where it's we got to pay attention to it. And I had a moment with my staff and said, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing right? Let's really focus and just start all over with recipes, with our feedback from our customers, and just our whole approach. And what we did was a series of focus groups that lasted months in the beginning of 2013. And we asked our customers, just tell us, and the critics too. We went right to people who said, I hate, I don't like, and I wanted to know what they wanted. I wanted to know what it was they were looking for. And so many people said to me, oh, it must be a real blow to your ego, all that kind of stuff. I guess, I'm in it to understand and to make something better.
Well, because you're a very practical and enterprising businessman. But in fact, what's it like? Because there's always the artistry component of making and serving food. If you thought you were making something that was as good tasting and expertly made as you could turn out, and you really liked it and liked the flavor, what was it like to hear people beat up on it? And what was it like to say, okay, fine, I'll make something that I don't particularly like? Of course, I'm putting words into your mouth. I bet you didn't do that to please other people.
And I didn't. It's I'm after the truth. I think just as much as everybody else is. And one thing that I found that it's difficult to get is honest feedback. And so when you get that feedback, and when you get any kind of feedback, it's a gift. Someone once said that. I'm it really is.
Even if it's like a relentless drumbeat on Yelp?
It doesn't matter, and even better if it is, because the thing is that there's probably some truth in it someplace, And that's what I really needed to kind of just look at. And for me, one of the things is how do we make a better cake? I want to know that. And part of that means well, what's the texture you're going for? What's the flavor? What's all the dimensions and all the different characteristics of the cake, of the sponge? What is it supposed to be? And I've come to terms with the fact that just because I like something doesn't mean that everybody else will. And I think about it in terms of music, I'm a huge Radiohead fan. Not everybody likes Radiohead. I'm a huge Prince fan as a kid.
So it's time to start making us hungry, because we're about to be really hungry and incredibly restless to taste some of your cakes. What were some of the things that you actually liked beforehand, you loved, and you just said, reluctant but fond farewell?
Potato starch.
Potato starch, beloved by Jews at Passover.
Indeed, indeed. And in French baking, and it's expensive. It's got a great texture. It lends itself to adding starch without protein so that you can have a finer texture.
It makes a very delicate crumb like cake flour.
Yeah, but it can kind of add to, I think, a drier texture after a longer period of time. So that was one thing that I said, okay, we're going to let go of that, or at least reduce the amount of that. But really, it's all about vegetable fats. Because you got to look at what kind of fat you're using in a cake in order to shorten the length of the gluten
Wait, I thought you were a
strand.
great defender of butter.
I'm a huge defender of butter.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it, and I still am. But we use a blend of different fats rather than just going with one solitary shortening agent.
And is that a change from your original days?
It is, because I used to just do butter, sugar, eggs, flour. Now we do butter, palm oil, which is a naturally saturated vegetable fat, So it's not using artificially hydrogenated fats like a Crisco type thing that was, and it's been outlawed and all that stuff. So blending that in, plus a little bit of canola oil, plus a little bit of, I don't know, sometimes we use a little extra egg yolks for the fat there. Taking the blend.
And what about flavors? Because we're all interested in flavors, and tell us about these jars and what we're going to find when we open them, which I assure you I can't because there's nice sanitary plastic wrapping.
What happened with that whole feedback session that we went to our customers with in 2013 was they said, you know, we want cream cheese icing. That's what we want. That's the thing that we love the most, especially of what you make. And the cupcakes are great, all that kind of stuff, a little tired of it, just like you were saying, but they're hard to handle. Difficult to carry. If I take one bite, then I feel invested. I don't want to eat the whole thing in one shot. I just want a little bit of sweet here and there. People wanted portability. People wanted something that was neater than a cupcake. And so we took all that information, all that feedback, and it took a while. I mean, it took a good 8 months before we got down to a jar in this size as an individual portion of a cake snack. And it's working really well because, I mean, one thing, I love it. I'm engaged, I'm energized, and I can see a different business model. And I like the idea of kind of relaunching the business in a different business model because it just has got a lot more details that I can sink my teeth into.
There's a couple things. Isn't it the idea that, you know, if you have something that's this small, you really haven't had any calories, right? It's completely innocent. There's nothing that you can possibly worry about after you've had this. The other thing is you can go back to it, so it's clean. You can put it in your bag.
My wife takes like one baby spoonful, like every once in a while, you know, at night.
That's right. You keep it going, and also for you, mass production, because you were saying that you're going to a wholesale from a retail model.
Yeah, and it's a totally, to me, like what's neat is just going into that whole thing. Like we're using machines, we're using a different approach, and it just serves what my interests are a little bit better, and I think it serves the customer's interests a lot better. No one came to us saying, I want cake in a jar, you know, but based on all the different feedback, this is really the element that kind of solves problems that people were saying they had.
And have you patented cake in a jar?
No, you can't
trademarked
patent it. Trademarked it, yeah. Have your cake and take it too, that kind of thing.
All right, so you will all be able to have, there are samples. This is the good news. We could not have talked about this without actually providing you the chance to pretend you have had no calories. So you can now pretend nothing, but you will go out and you will learn something about cupcake cleanliness, which I really like, and truth in cupcakes from a very admirably entrepreneurial Warren Brown.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming.